I'm excited to introduce Steve Donahue, who's our next speaker. Steve is an international speaker, is a best-selling author, and a documentary filmmaker. He's one of the world's top authorities on achieving success through narrative intelligence. Steve has helped over 1,000 organizations on 4 continents learn to adapt, innovate, and excel in a world of change. Last year, he dressed some of our GMs at an event organized by the Club Benchmarking. Some of the other groups Steve has spoken to include the United States Department of Justice, Hilton Hotels, UPS, Boeing, the World Bank, and the British Columbia Association of Funeral Directors. Steve, you want to talk to us about that a little bit along the way, or are you okay? We definitely need to hear about that one. As a young man, Steve crossed the Sahara Desert from north to south. He will be sharing his own epic story and help us build club cultures that achieve epic results through the application of cutting-edge concepts. Please join me in welcoming from British Columbia, Canada, Steve Donahue, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I will tell you about the funeral directors. I spoke to them 3 years in a row. This is a long time ago, but I'll never forget them. I gave them the same speech 3 years in a row. And the speech was entitled, How to Have Fun at Work. And what I learned was they actually have a lot of fun, but you know, they have to have that professional demeanor. And they would tell me their stories, and after one of those presentations, a young lady came up, and she was very new to the industry, and she was being called out to help a very elderly couple pre-plan their funeral. So you understand the concept? Pre-planning a funeral saves your loved ones, you know, the trouble. Anyone here has already pre-planned their funeral, you know? Yeah, well, good for you then. Just gonna live forever, I guess, why not? She goes out, both husband and wife, they want to each pre-plan their funerals. They pour her a cup of tea, and the first words out of her mouth are, so, who'd like to go first? You know, it was interesting because I love Florida, and South Florida, the beaches here were an inspiration for a book I wrote a few years ago. And I was just thinking, waiting, something one of the presenters said made me realize that coming to Florida for the first time when I was 10 years old actually changed my life. As you know, I've crossed the Sahara Desert, and I've often wondered, well, where did that all start? Where did a kid from Toledo, Ohio, want to cross the Sahara? And I think this is a part of it because I grew up in a big family of 7 children. And one winter, our grandparents would winter in Lake Worth. We got a call that my grandfather had had a little health issue. He was told that he couldn't fly home to Toledo. He needed the vehicle. And so my dad was volunteered to drive down to bring the vehicle, and he'd fly home. And he kind of wanted company. So he says, I got 7 kids. How am I going to pick one and only one to go with me? And the criteria was, I was the only one of 7 kids who did not get car sick. Not the one that would ask Dad to pull over on the side of the road. And the morning we left, we got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We pushed the car in neutral out the driveway so that my sisters and my brother would not know what was going to happen. It was like a stealth operation. And if you come to a Donahue family reunion to this day, they hate my guts because I was the one that went to Florida, but not them. But that journey, I think, started this thing for me where I would go and travel and explore and do things. And I'm going to tell you that story today as an example, you know, of how being a GM or assistant GM or running food and bev or clubhouse manager or pro, whatever, you can look at your work in the form of a story, and I'm going to share some fabulous results from other organizations and other industries to give you an idea of how they're doing that. So the way that works like this, I do play my drum a bit when I tell my story, but I want to begin with a little test. The test goes like this. I'm going to play a few simple rhythms on my drum, and I'd like you to clap back the rhythm as a group after you hear it, okay? Here we go. First rhythm, hands ready. And here's my first one. Good, all right. Okay. Very good. All right, one last one. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I'd do anything for a cheap laugh. Well, actually, it was a test. It is a test. You passed. You have good rhythm. But let's be honest. Everyone has at least some rhythm. It's a type of what we call human intelligence. And what I'm going to talk about today is something called narrative intelligence. And it's just like rhythm. Everybody has narrative intelligence. Everybody knows how to tell a story. But here's the thing. Narrative intelligence is more than just telling stories. I kind of think about it this way. Too bad. I was going to... just a second here. Help, Clayton. Can we go back just a little bit? Can we go back? Sorry, folks. I'm getting ahead of myself. Just go back to like one of those first few slides before the Sahara slides. So what I'm trying to say is this. When I think of storytelling, I call that story 1.0. So it's great to tell stories. You want good stories. You want your board to have stories to tell. This is important as leaders. That's story 1.0. There's also something called story 2.0, and that is interesting. Story 2.0 is about being in a story. What kind of story are we in at our club, with our members, with our staff? And are we in the right kind of story? And what I'm going to talk about today is, well, I'm going to tell you an epic story, my epic story, but the reasons for doing that is story 2.0. I want you to feel like you are in an epic story in your club with your members, like where people feel like they're heroes on a quest, battling together to achieve the same goals. I'm going to show you how this story structure works, and you can drop it right into your club culture, right into your board culture, to your staff. It's some fantastic results. And first of all, though, I'm going to tell you my epic story. There we go. Thank you, Clayton. The Sahara Desert is the largest desert on the planet. It's approximately the size of the United States of America. We're going to start this story in the middle of the world's largest desert. I want you to imagine that you and your best friend are right here. You are stranded. You have no vehicle. You have no means of transportation whatsoever, nothing. Only thing that you have is a small campfire, which... Cool. Okay, here's the game. The game goes like this. I'm going to ask a question. You get it right, you get a book. Wizard of Oz is an epic story. Who's the hero or the heroine? Who said Dorothy over here? There you go. Now, these are her committed companions, the Scarecrow, the Lion, the Tin Man. Together with Dorothy, they are on a quest. What's their quest?
Get her home, get a heart, get a...
Oz, yes, right there, Carmen. To see the wizard. They all have something they want, but together, see the idea, together we want to be on that. Awesome. Okay, so now, their quest is to see the wizard, but they must fight a battle. Who are they battling? Wicked Witch of the West. There you go. And finally, Dorothy has a trusted guide, someone helping her. Glinda, yes, Glinda, the good witch. One last question. All right. What's Toto? Yeah. That's not a hard... You get a book? No, the question is, what's Toto?
Terrier.
Yes! Round of applause for our dog expert. I got another book. I got a few more books. I ran out of those, but that's great. It's Toto. Everyone gets excited. It's Toto. Well done. So you see it's there. It's not like you're going to have trouble remembering things. The trick is how you apply it, how you sort of turn it into your club culture. Now, here's the crazy part. So the thing is this. Stories create reality, right? So when you watch one of those movies, you feel a little bit like you're in an epic story. And here's the key to the whole thing. People want to feel like they are in an epic story. They want to feel like they're heroes and heroines. They're fighting for something that matters, and they're not alone. And you can use this to like work with your board, work with your members. It's really, really powerful. And I'm going to give you one last idea to kind of prove it to you, okay? How many of you are sports fans? So a lot of sports fans. Call out a team. Who's your team?
Clemson Tigers.
Clemson Tigers. Well done. Okay. Who else?
Gators.
Gators. Okay. Who else? Bulldogs. Yes. Who? Canucks. What kind of medication are you on, sir? That's a painful. Are you from Canada originally? Where are you from? Oh, okay. So I live in Victoria, but there's been a struggle lately. Okay. Yeah, exactly. It's not a sport. Ooh, good Dennis. This is great. Sports teams. Do you know how big the industry is globally? $1 trillion. Trillion. That's T. And it's all based on these 5 components. Sports wouldn't make a dime if it wasn't for the epic story. Check it out. This is all going to make sense to you. On a sports team, who are the heroes? Players, absolutely. And what are the battles? Games. Yeah. Games. What is every team's quest? Win the championship, right? Who is the trusted guide? Who are the committed companions? The fans. The fans. The fans are the secret sauce. Yes, so I hear, of course, teammates are also committed companions, but what matters here is it's the fans. Think about this for a second. The fans are so woven into the story of their sports team that we don't even call them customers. Consider that for a second. A $1 trillion industry, no customers. That's a story, folks. Now, everybody knows the fans are not on the team. No one's disputing that. But here's the secret. The fans are on the quest. You see? They want to win just as much, right? They want to win the Stanley Cup or the Super Bowl. The fans are on the quest. How else could you explain this guy?
Scott.
And it's international. It's not just America. These are Australian rugby fans. Here's a young Dutch soccer supporter. That's real too. I thought it was photoshopped. I thought it was photoshopped because then I saw it where, he has a Dutch team's name, and then I saw it where it had like an English team's jersey. But I gave a speech a year ago to kind of an international group in Minnesota. 2 guys from Holland were there, and they just interrupted me. And they went into this long apology on behalf of their nation for this kid doing this. It was a national embarrassment for them. But let's think about it for a second. Think about the passion of a sports fan. Let's talk more about your staff. What if everybody came to work every day as fired up as a sports fan on games day? All right? What if everyone in your club cared as much about winning every day for you? This is where this thing starts to click, right? What if, and I'm not saying this is not happening, but I was speaking with one of the folks here in the audience about their club, and it feels like the members are just so much part of the story that it's kind of that dynamic you have with customers. And maybe you all have that. I'm not saying that you don't have any of this. What I'm saying is what you probably just need to do is start to use this language, use this terminology, and you can change your results by leveraging it. Because what we're going to do, we're going to go through it one at a time. We'll go through those 5 components. But what I'll do very quickly is just return to my story. Because my story, A, I started right in the middle. But B, it's an epic story. It's got all the components. So as I go through it, just kind of see if you can catch, when I describe one of them, because I'm not going to do it overtly, right? All right, back up real quickly. So I did this when I was 20 years old. At the time, my plan was to go to Europe on this boat. This boat's in Montreal. So I grew up in Ohio. I live in Canada now, but I'm from Ohio. So I hitchhiked from Toledo to Montreal, get on this boat. I've saved some money, and I plan to spend a whole year hitchhiking, backpacking around, Europe for a year. Any of you do anything like that when you got out of school, took a trip somewhere, did something, hitchhiked, committed crimes? I don't know. Where'd you go, Mike?
Brendan and I, when we graduated from high school,
Yeah.
toured the country,
Yeah, so America, you just did a big trip around.
12,000 miles.
Yeah, you could be a speaker. I could help you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, there we go. So you know what I'm talking about. You're out of school, you want to have a trip. I planned to go alone. I really kind of wanted to do it by myself. Everything changed the first day on that boat because I met a young Canadian guy named Tallis, and within minutes of meeting Tallis, I knew we would be friends for life. How many of you have ever had that extraordinary experience where you met someone you knew instantly? Friends. Yeah, that's actually quite a lot. How many of you have at least a friend? Okay. Yeah, there were some blank looks there. I have 700 friends on Facebook. No, you don't. Those are Russians. You're just not that popular, sorry. So we're on the boat, we're having a blast, Tallis and I. We're best friends. We end up in Paris. And so it's November, it's getting cold. And Tallis, he says to me, he says, Steve, I'd like to tell you a dream I've had my whole life. And it's an interesting dream because it's basically the same dream that keeps all of you in business, because here's what his dream was. Classic Canadian dream. His dream was simply, I want to spend the entire winter on a tropical beach. He'd never done that. Now, I'd grown up in Ohio where it was equally cold as Toronto, but that wasn't something, we talked about a lot. But I said, you know what? I'll go with you. I'll head south. You're my best friend. Where do you want to go? Now, let me test your beach geography, okay? Because you're kind of in the beach business. You're in Paris. How many of you have ever been to Paris? Okay, so tons. You're in Paris, now you're going to head south for the winter. What are the first really amazing beaches you're going to come to? I'm sorry? Monaco, yes, the French Riviera. This is what we thought. French guy is overhearing us. He butts in. He says, excusez-moi, mais c'est pas joli là. And I thought, what? He says, in winter, it's not nice at all there. It's horrible. It's cold. There's this wind that blows down out of the Alps called the Mistral. It's just like people don't go there. You've got to go much further south if you want to be on a tropical beach. And we said, well, how far south? He says, you've got to go right through Europe. You've got to cross the Mediterranean. You've got to cross the largest desert in the world. And even after you cross the desert, you've still got to go another 1,000 miles south. This is why we crossed the Sahara. And I have a confession to make, and I don't know if Beth is here, but I'm going to apologize to Beth because I lied. The real title of today's presentation is something stupid I did when I was 20. How many of you did something stupid when you were 20? How many of you turned it into a career? Yeah, meaning you. So, folks, it was flat out dumb. We didn't have transportation. We didn't know how to even get out of Paris. And so Tallis starts looking around, and he finds these two French guys, Jean-Luc and Andre, and they each have a vehicle, and they each want to cross the Sahara Desert, and they want us to help with the driving and, kick in money for gas. We're gone. We're on the way. We drive through France, we get on a ferry, we cross the Mediterranean, and we go pretty much straight across, and we're in Algeria, which is the biggest country in Africa, 99% of it desert. We drive over the Atlas Mountains, and then boom, we're in the Sahara. And it was I was surprised there was a road. Really was, because we're doing 60 miles an hour over the Sahara Desert, and I'm thinking, dude, how hard is this going to be? Well, actually, really hard. Really hard. Without any warning, this road ended. And then all hell breaks loose. We're getting lost. We're getting stuck. We're running out of water. We're fighting with each other. And I have this awful realization that I am completely and utterly unprepared. You ever have that experience in your life? I'm not going to ask you to share it, but I'll bet because of what you do, once or twice you've had that feeling. It's not a good feeling. I was unprepared, especially when it came to the clothing that I've brought with me. I wonder what I was thinking. Hey, what'd be comfortable in the Sahara Desert? Really, really, really tight pair of booty shorts. Yeah, that'll. Could I get into any of your clubs dressed like that? And it's like I mugged some 6-year-old and stole his T-shirt. In my last speech, someone said, "You look like you're auditioning for the Village People." Richard Simmons. So let me show the guys here. So there's Andre. He's in the white scarf. So Talis is with Andre in that little truck there. And I'm going to be in the blue car. It's just it's a Peugeot. It's a family sedan with Jean-Luc. And what we've done is we've ripped out the back seat and we've stacked in extra jerry cans of water and fuel and things like that. And this is what we're doing. Now, Talis, he's obviously taking the photograph. And I'm going to show you his picture. Now, I have to tell you, I only have one photograph of Talis in the Sahara. He went on to become a professional photographer, and he never put his camera down. He did once. I picked it up. I took this picture. Believe me, if I had 2 photos, you wouldn't be seeing this one, but here is Talis. All right, we're going to move on. Now, I know what you're thinking. Steve, your story's not epic. You need more time. But did you notice the energy in the room went up? So, energy, battles, there's this link. Like there's a link between them. And here's the thing though, right? You probably just realized you have way too many battles. See? Do you know this story? It's a great story about the first time Bill Gates met Warren Buffett, 2 of the richest men in the world. I think Gates was number 1 at the time. I believe he's not anymore 1. Buffett was 3rd. So they were at a dinner party with other very successful people. And the host of the party said, "Hey, let's do a little icebreaker. I want everyone to write down on that piece of paper at your seat there the single most important factor in your success." Gates and Buffett wrote the same thing on their paper, flipped it over. The word was focus. And I'm not saying you have to give up on all these other battles, but you've got to pick the ones that give you impact. You've got to focus. And so I don't know if you noticed, but we have 2, you know. And the reason why we have 2 battles, it's really important. You might want to write this down. The reason there's 2 battles is that's because 2 is how many bricks there are on the 2nd row of a pyramid. That's the reason. Had you though? Well, the pens came out. I was going to write that down. No, there's another reason why 2. First of all, 2 is not too many. People will remember 2 things. We're this and we're that. You can change it. It can be 1 month like that, 1 month like this, a certain stretch of the board. It can be weekly. You can, have it back in food and bev where your battles this week are this and that. But people will fight 2 battles. And we really recommend that you fight battles that you can score. People like to score. You know how popular video games are now? Also based on epic stories, by the way. Scoring. You get to know how you place. So we like that. Like, give you an example. Another one of my clients is I think I can tell you their name. Now let me think. Did I? Sometimes I have to sign it. No, I don't think I signed anything. So they're called Meritage. That's a home builder. And they're big. They're like the 7th biggest home builder in America. So they've repositioned their company, and their primary customer now is millennial first-time home buyers. That's their client. So if that's your customer, what do you think one of the biggest battles you have to fight would be? Affordability, absolutely. It's cost. That's their biggest thing. Their quest is enriching lives by building the American dream. So the millennial American dream is on a budget. It's just, you know what housing's costing, right? So, and the other thing is they have two battles. The other thing is complexity. Millennials are stressed out by buying a house. They have to want to just go click, click. That's how they want to buy a house. Maybe, and I don't know if you get much of that experience in what you do, but I thought it's amazing. They're overwhelmed. The world, and Meritage, they're literally on a mission to get these young adults out of mom and dad's house.
That's the way they work too.
Yeah, they want to click it. So, I'm going to move on though, because this is important. I think in many ways this is why I love the two battles. And it's something I learned from Hollywood. In every really good movie, like the kind that wins Best Picture, you're going to have two battles, an external battle and an internal battle. And it's the internal battle that makes the movie great. For example, how many of you have seen this movie?
Great.
All right, so let me set it up if you haven't seen it. Colin Firth plays the person who's about to become King George VI of Great Britain. Now, he was never supposed to have that job, was he? But his brother gave up the throne to marry Wallis Simpson, which is really interesting because they've now changed that rule, right? Because Meghan Markle was able to marry one of those princes. I lose track of them. But. So, now, the speech that he has to give is a speech where Great Britain will declare war on the Nazis. That's his external problem. That's a heck of a speech to give. Any one of us would be stressed by that. But he's got an even bigger internal problem. What is it? He stutters. He can hardly talk to one person, let alone the nation. And the movie turns on that inner battle. Let's watch a short clip here, and then we'll talk some more about it. Maybe you could take the lights down if it's possible.
And today, his younger brother, His Royal Highness the Duke of York, will give his inaugural broadcast to the nation and the world.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. What do you think? I get goosebumps watching that. And here's the thing, it's like, well, we can take the lights up too, if that's convenient. Here's the thing. Look what this king has to do. He has to inspire an entire nation for the fight of their lives. And if he can pull it off, that's impact, right? It's not just about his problem, it's the country. And so, all of us in this room, we are no different from King George VI. Every one of us has our own little internal demon, right? And what I try to get leaders to do is to remember, you're leaders, you're successful, I know you've been doing this a while, and yet to take things to the next level, to create this story, to deal with a board that may be a little bit trickier than normal. You've got to confront and defeat that thing in you. Here's an example from my own life. I have battled perfectionism most of my life. Anyone relate to that? So my very first book, the one about crossing the Sahara, took 10 years to write because I wanted it to be perfect. Well, it was never going to be perfect, so it was never going to be... You see what happened. And so I had an amazing thing happen once. I was at an event, kind of like this, about this size. I heard a speaker. I really liked her. I went up afterwards. I thought maybe she could be my guide, my trusted guide. I said, Marsha, I really liked your speech. I told her my problem. And she said, oh, Steve, you know the old saying. I said, what's that? She says, any job worth doing is worth doing poorly. I said, no, you got it wrong. She says, no, you got it wrong. That's what's in your way. And when the book came out, suddenly, around the world, hundreds of thousands of people could read it, and it wasn't perfect. But that was impact because I won that battle. You know what I'm saying? And so what I challenge you as leaders to do is to think about that. But you can also work with staff in this way. You know, some of my clients will pick this one great big external battle everyone's fighting, and then they'll invite their teams to what's inside you that's in the way. Sometimes they share that information, sometimes they don't. There's not a right or wrong way. But what it is, folks, is it's impact. This is impact when you're focused. Now, if you do these first two, then something really exciting starts to happen. People start to play these epic roles. So the hero and the guide and the companion. And the trick here is that people play their roles in life, and they play them well. How many of you have ever worked with someone who played the role of Mr. Know-It-All? Yeah? How about Miss Nitpicker? Yeah? And they're always the same, right? They're always in character. You can count on them. That's the craziest thing. But see, what happens when we start to do this is it gives them an option to play another role. Let me give you my example. So my whole life, I have played the role of the nonconformist. I've always had to be different. In fact, when I graduated from high school, I was actually voted the most nonconformist student in the school. 2,000 kids. I'm voted nonconformist, which created a personal dilemma for me. Should I accept the award? Think about it. Years ago, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, at what age did you notice that I was different from all the other kids? She sent me this photograph. I'm 4 years older. 4 years old. I hate following rules. I can't stand following rules. Even getting government-issued ID photos taken. I don't like following the rules. They said smile, so I smiled. Then they changed the rules, remember that? Don't smile. I did not smile. Then there's the day I had a little too much coffee. My favorite of all time. And I used that for 5 years going through airport security. I became accustomed to that extra little bit of secondary security screening. I didn't even wait for them to point. I would just go there. I just knew. Finally, I got so frustrated, I said to one of the TSA, do I look like a terrorist to you? He said, absolutely. But think about this. I'm a nonconformist. I hate following rules. What is a security line at the airport if nothing but following rules? Take your shoes off. Take your laptop out. Empty your, you've done it, right? And here's what happened. Not too long ago, I realized something. It was amazing, actually. I realized that I was in a bigger story. That those TSA security folks are on a quest. What's their quest? To keep us safe. And if I listen to them and do what I'm told, and I'm on that journey too. I'm a committed companion. Everyone in that line is. We're all in this story together. And it might not sound like a big deal, but for me, it completely changed my behavior. I'm actually now a trusted guide in the line when I spot inexperienced travelers. I'm coaching them on how to get ready, what to do. Because I bought into this story. And so this is what happens. So you give them another option. So let's look at what these roles are, because I think you want to have an idea. Okay, so let me just kind of get up there. See, what happens with the epic story is you get new results, right? This is what you're after. So let's take the hero, for example. Hero is really about someone who gets out of their comfort zone a little bit. Just a bit of courage, takes a risk, says, hey, boss, I was thinking maybe we should change this. Oops, took a risk. They take risks. The result is that you win battles. You want this. You want people to feel like heroes. Thinking back to, Irma, did you see any heroes? Yeah, where did that come from? I'll tell you where it came from. It's situational. You have to create the situation that allows people to go to these roles. So when a disaster strikes, and you'll see it anywhere, it could be a flood, could be whatever, people filling sandbags. You know, with all the floods, these folks come from hundreds of miles away with their boats, you know, the guys in their boats. And sports creates the situation for you to feel like a committed companion. So as leaders, you can create the situation that people feel like heroes. Anytime they do any one of those things, they're a hero. Okay, then we got the trusted guide. So that's about having wisdom. They're going to show the way, and the result is that others improve. White House staff wake up, look at their phones and go, oh shit. Meanwhile, across the street at CNN, producers are going, oh boy. There's only two ways to look at problems. And what happens is, if all you do is say, oh boy, that's all you do, it reminds you you're in a story. And maybe you'll do something with it or not, but when you get good at it, you'll say, how can I take this problem that we're having right now and turn it into something that serves our story? Who's going to be the hero? Is this a battle we need to fight? So you start to connect it by just saying, oh boy. So, okay, I conquered my perfectionism. I wrote my first book. I wanted that book to be a bestseller so bad. I mean, I can't even describe how bad it was. Shifting Sands came out. Within 1 week, it was on the New York Times bestseller list. You want to know how I accomplished that? I purchased 10,000 copies. Bingo! Now, I know you're thinking, Steve, that's a little bit sneaky, but it was actually part of a bigger plan. The plan was, if I somehow got on the New York Times bestseller list, people who ordered books in bookstores would notice, and they go, we better get a couple copies of Shifting Sands, and it worked. Folks, my publisher could not ship them fast enough. They could not print them fast enough. And I had this moment of thinking, I'm going to be rich. But there's something nobody told me. You may not know this. Bookstores in North America do not buy books. They borrow them. Any book they don't sell can be shipped back to the publisher for a complete refund, no questions asked. When all the returns are accounted for, my book in Canada, in bookstores, has sold the grand total of 200 copies. It's a complete failure. And I've got 10,000 copies of my failure in my basement. Oh, shit. To make matters worse, my publisher wants to be paid for the books. I don't have that kind of money. I thought they were going to sell like hotcakes. Now I realize the only way to pay for the books is to sell the books. So I become the busiest motivational speaker in North America. I will speak anywhere, at any time, to any audience, for any fee, sometimes for no fee. Just let me sell a few of those goddamn books. And every day is the same. I enter this period of my life I now refer to as Groundhog Day. Every day is the same. Alarm clock goes off. I sit upright in a hotel room. I get dressed. I come downstairs to a room something like this, give a speech to a group like you, sell some books afterwards, taxi to the airport, fly somewhere else, do it all over again, day after day after day, week after week after week, month after month after month, selling those books. Finally, one day, I sit up in a hotel room and I have a horrible realization. I hate my job. Think about it. I'm a motivational speaker and I hate my job. You see a little problem with that story. So I got an external problem. I got to sell 10,000 books, but the internal problem is way more serious. I hate my job. I figure I've got to work on that. I'm looking for inspiration anywhere I can find it. I phoned Moscow. How many copies of Shifting Sands did you sell in Russia? We have sold 200 copies. Thank you. Phoned Istanbul. How many copies of Shifting Sands did you sell in Turkey? We have sold little less than 200 copies. Just so you know, I only do one accent. Phone South Korea. They didn't know exactly. I said, well, approximately. They said, oh, you've sold at least 100,000. I said, I beg your pardon. They said, oh, it's just runaway bestseller. I said, now when you say sell, are we talking about people with money going into a store? So I said, well, why? What's the reason? It's so popular. They said, we don't have a clue. Let me ask you a question. You write a book. It sells 200 copies in America. 100,000 in South Korea. What do? Go to South Korea. Do you know what just happened? I'm going to tell you something. I said, what would you do? You said go to South Korea. But you know what I heard? I heard, oh boy. You are thinking like a storyteller already. You know there's a story in my problem. You know if I go to South Korea, something epic might happen. That's what you just did. And that's what I want you to do. Think about, stories thrive on problems. Start saying, oh boy. Start looking for a way to turn that into your story. You don't have to be crazy at first. Just a little bit. Just try some little things. Because it's like, you'd be amazed what happens. So now, here I am. I'm a motivational speaker. I hate my job. I've got a coach. I've got a trusted guide who's trying to help me find my motivation. Her name was Renee. Renee convinced me to go to Korea to find out why the book was such a success. And then she said something shocking. She said, you've got to make a documentary film about your trip. I said, well, okay, I've never made a film, but I went and met with a guy named Peter Campbell, one of Canada's top documentary filmmakers. He said, let me get this straight. You're a motivational speaker. You had absolutely no motivation. Yeah. You wrote a book. It bombed in Canada, huge hit in Korea. Yeah. You want to go there, find out why it's a success, and turn it into a film. I said, exactly. What do you think, Peter? He said, I love it. I would love to make this film with you. I've actually thought of the title already. Take my advice, I can't. So, we're going to Korea. I got a new role. My role is executive producer. You know what that means? You pay. And I don't care. I'm committing to the role. And you got to commit too, folks. You're not just the GM. You're not the club managers. You're the storyteller. Sometimes you're the hero too. You can't halfway. Have you ever watched a movie where you could tell the actor wasn't really into it? Or a play? They're not committed. You've got to commit. I'm committed. I'm learning. I'm teaching myself to read and write and speak Korean. I got pretty good at it. I can translate that for you. It says shifting sands. We go to Korea. There's Peter and our translator, Jenna. Jenna hands me a box of business cards. The card's supposed to say, Steve Donahue, writer, speaker. I flip the card over. It says, career consultant. I said, what happened to speaker? She said, you can't put it on a business card in Korea. It's against the rules. It's a very serious problem. I said, what's the rule? She said, well, speaker's not considered a job in Korea because everyone can speak. She said, it's like calling yourself breather or eater. Okay. Now I'm getting the concept. So, okay, I'm in a country, my profession doesn't exist, but that's a problem because Peter Campbell's plan is I'm going to give tons of motivational speeches. And people who bought the book will come to the speech, and after the speech, they'll get their book signed. And while they're waiting in line to get the book signed, he'll interview them with Jenna. Find out why they like the book. We're going to have a film. We're screwed. She says, oh, they don't even understand the concept of a motivational speech. I'm thinking, oh shit, Peter Campbell's a storyteller. He's going, no, this is great. This is amazing. This will be like the moment in the film. We just need to, there's going to, Jenna, help me. Give me something. She goes, well, they love listening to authors deliver a lecture. Peter looks at me and said, you are no longer a motivational speaker. I said, I don't know how to give a lecture. He says, we don't have a story if you can't do that. You got to commit to the roles. They're going to show up once you start doing this. I'm giving my first ever lecture. It's a big deal. Samsung has organized the lecture. Let me tell you about Samsung. A, the most important corporation in Korea. B, every year they put out a list of the 10 most important books every leader in Korea should read. Shifting Sands is on that list. And Koreans follow rules. This is a huge part of the book's success. I'm saying thank you. I'm going to give this lecture. I'm nervous. I don't normally get nervous. I like doing this, but I'm really nervous. I've never given a lecture before. I'm pacing back and forth in this downstairs area, drinking. Drinking way too much water. When I get nervous, I drink a lot of water. Young lady comes down from the publisher. She says, She bows and says, Mr. Donahue, it's now time to deliver your lecture. Will you please follow me? I bow back. I say, thank you very much. You go ahead. I'll be right there. And I go to the men's room because I've had all this water. Now, it comes time to flush the toilet. I do not know what button to push. Let me zoom in here. So I pick one of the buttons. The toilet doesn't flush. I just hear a whirring sound. So I go like this. A jet stream of water comes shooting out of the toilet straight at me. I jump out of the way just in time to avoid getting hit. It hits the stall. It's trickling down. It's making a puddle. I'm thinking it's going to stop in a second. It doesn't stop. I can't get out of this toilet without getting soaking wet to give my first ever lecture. I think I got to turn this sucker off. I push another button. Doesn't turn it off. It makes the jet stream track like a machine gun. It's got me pinned up so tight here, I panic. Help, I'm stuck in the toilet. No one can hear me. They're all upstairs. Then I remember, I'm playing another role. I'm the star of a movie. I have a microphone on. Peter Campbell has a headset. Peter can hear me. Peter, thank God you're here. Does he help? No, he turns on the lights and starts filming the thing.
I'm trapped. I can't get up in the toilet. I push this button. Look, here, look. This is, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. I need help. I can't.
Can I help you?
Yeah, what button can I
I'm sorry.
Okay, shh. This is a good part. You just gotta be quiet. Shh. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. 고맙습니다.
I haven't seen nothing.
Yeah, it's just so cute when she's, I haven't seen nothing. Man. So I basically went from one Bill Murray movie to another. Okay, I want to give you one last idea before we finish. But before we do that, here's, if you want the notes, all you have to do is send me an email. So you could take a picture of that, or you just Google me and go to my site, or you can give me your business card. I don't have to rush off. And it'd take, it's going to take about a week to get you the notes. And what's really cool is you can then email me back. You can tell me a story about how this is working for you. And if you have a question, ask me. I'm in the story too, folks. Right? This is not Steve gives a speech and he goes away forever. I'm in your story. So please don't be shy about that. All right. I'm going to move on. I want to, please come up afterwards if somehow you didn't get that down. And let's, what have we got here? Okay, so the last little idea I want to give you is the idea that stories have to come full circle. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy makes it back to Kansas, right? Alice and I, we make it back to Paris. Stories come full circle. And in terms of what you do, what I mean when I say a story comes full circle, I mean that you have a real direct experience of how what you do impacts others. I'll give you an example. The pharmaceutical client I mentioned earlier, I've spoken to them about a dozen times. Every conference they have, and it doesn't matter. It could be HR, it could be sales, could be scientists, could be logistics. They have a patient whose life was saved by their medication speak to the people. There's never a dry eye in the room. And that's a story coming full circle. You could be so far removed from the medical environment, and you come to that conference once a year and it carries you, right? That's what I'm talking about. You've got to find the ways to connect for everybody, not just your staff. Your board has to feel like stories come full circle too for them. What is that? I don't know. I don't know how to tell you the way to do it, but you've got to find it. Speaking of stories coming full circle, I actually went back to the Sahara Desert as part of all this. With Peter Campbell, part of the film, 33 years after I crossed the Sahara, I went back. And the reason I went back is because of this young Korean guy. He read my book. He was going through a tough time. He asked me to take him to the Sahara Desert. He felt like he'd learned something about life. And what a wonderful thing it was for me to do, to go back. And here we have, well, he read my book. Can we call him a customer, a fan? Here we have this blurring of the line, right? And what's so great about what you do is your memories are so much part of your story, right? You can use that even more to help the stories come full circle. It was amazing. We got to hang out with our guides were Tuaregs. I told them the salt and pepper story that I just told you. They said, oh, we've all done the fake ambush trick. They just laughed. They thought it was so funny. Okay, I'll finish up just telling you what we actually experienced in Korea. This is where my business story came full circle. So, Clayton, we might want to turn it down a bit just because I'm going to talk while the music plays. So it's more of that kind of a thing we want to watch. Yeah, just down a little bit from that. So, they were right. If we called it a lecture, they would come. And they would wait in line to get their book signed. 3 hours, they would wait in line. And when they finally got to the front of the line, they would tell me a story. Sometimes with tears in their eyes of how my book had made a difference to them. Folks, this line, it would go out the auditorium, into the lobby, out the door, and around the block. And I would listen to hundreds of stories every night. Can you imagine that? And there's a really nice scene in the film. Oh, yeah, if you do get the notes, I'll send you a link to the film. Lovely scene in the film where we've gone back to the hotel. I'm going through a big stack of business cards from all, signing the books. And I get to this one with a note on it. And the note, I remembered her. She was very shy. She just wanted me to read the note. And as I'm reading the note, I start to cry. What she's written is so touching. And Peter, what you don't see in the film is he stops rolling. He puts his hand on my shoulder. And he said, I just realized we're making the wrong movie. This is not going to be a story about what your book did for Koreans. The real message is what Koreans did for you. And as soon as he said that, I realized he was right. Because I was no longer stuck. I was on a quest. And I realized my story is much bigger than me. And so is yours. Can you imagine if Peter Campbell and I made a film about your club, how long that line would be? Because we'd find them. We'd find the families. We'd find the members. We'd find the people who you'd given a job to and gone on to do other things. And they would be in line, some with a tear in their eye, because what you do is epic. You create community. You extend the joyful part of a person's life. How much more epic is that? All I'm saying is you need to tell it like an epic story. Find some way to feel like you're at that front of the line that says you're making a difference in this world. You matter. You're on a quest. What you do in your clubs is epic. Thank you so much.